All right, we are live. Welcome to another Patriarchs edition, another Red Men group, Patriarchs, the fathers. We are around and we are here, getting prepped and spreading the word for all family men out there, all men who have reproduced, all men that are putting it out and laying that foundation for the upcoming Patriarchs event for the 21 convention, which is happening in May and it's going to be incredible. So today, it says episode 3 in the title. I think we're on episode 6 or 7. So we'll get that fixed for the next go around. But we've had quite a few of these, and I really like the conversations that have come from it. I like the amount of men who are starting to rally around this, because as much as we love to talk about women, we love to talk about sex, we love to talk about all those aspects of life. Family men face unique challenges, and believe it or not, there are a lot of family men in the world. So to have us come together and talk about those specific challenges that we're all facing as fathers, husbands, married men, divorced, leading sons, leading daughters. It's good to have the conversation so we can get all men in this and not exclude anybody. So tonight, we've got Socrates from manningupsmart.com. We got Steve, the Man Mindset Williams, and George, the Sultan Bruno. So guys, let's do a quick update before we dive into this topic. Starting with you, Sock. How you been, man?
Dude, it's been busy. I mean, super freaking busy. Between my professional career, getting ready for the convention in Orlando this coming May. I had a new book released in October, and I'm like, I was telling you guys, the shittiest author around for having not really promoted and marketed, but starting to do some YouTube videos and trying to get about 10 of those in the can just to be able to kind of have that continuing content drip out and kind of keep going. And then working on a child's book series, again, giving fathers the tools to interact with their kids and children and to help teach children, appropriate skills living in today's red pill environment and social conditioning that we see going forward. Because if you don't train them on what to expect and how to deal with that, they'll learn in the heat of a moment. And I find that that's not conducive for positive results.
That's awesome. Steve, how you been?
Oh man, I'm good, man. Just doing the same thing at the Man Mindset, just changing the world one man at a time, just making sure that we keep pushing the narrative of loving yourself, being a man and being real with the world and understanding that, life doesn't really care about us. We got to face it head on, and just doing that, videos and live radio shows on Tuesday, brother.
That's a solid point, man. It's one of those things where the world doesn't care about us, so all we have is each other. So when you see this, the growth that we've had, this has been organic. Nobody gives a shit about us. So we've got to kind of be like, hey, man, I give a shit about you. You give a shit. Let's make this work. George, what's been going on? The Sultan.
Just working on the YouTube channel. Just celebrated 100,000 subscribers. Got honored by YouTube with the Silver Creator Award. Next is the Gold Award, which is $1 million, and I hope to be there by the end of 2020. And working on that, getting into shape. I have consistently worked out for the past year, and it's probably been the most consistent. And I'll be honest with you, probably started after the 2017 convention. And I'm excited about that. And I know a lot of people saw a difference in the way that I looked and the way that I carried myself between the 2 years, not unlike a lot of attendees who physically change from year to year. And I feel I'm in the most, I don't say that, I'm not strong like a 40-year-old guy. I'm strong for a 60-year-old guy, and I'm happy with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. So, which means that I'm in the top 1% of people my age. I'm totally good with that.
I saw a picture of you recently, and I was going to actually ask you. I know you shared the photos right when you cutting some guy's beard. And, you gave a little shout out to the guy, and like you were pointing to them, like, dude, you're looking jacked. Like you're looking great.
Yeah. It's, you know what it is? It's as the body matures, you have to learn to take care of yourself. I mean, it really is about self-care. I need my sleep. I need my nutrition. I know not to get into stupid arguments that could lead to physical altercations. I would rather whoop your mind than whoop your ass.
You know, I also like how you subtly drop in, you know, the plaque. So you had shared that picture, and that's impressive as hell. 100,000 subscribers. You've got that. So I'm looking behind you at your backdrop, and there's so much going on, and I'm like, it's not even there. Like, it's just one of those things. You achieved it, but it's not one of those things you gotta like, hey, look at me. It's like, hey, there's more to go. I'm going for 1 million now.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
impressive
going
as
for
hell,
1 million.
man.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
That's excellent. On my end, I mean, all I'm doing is prepping for Men of March. March 6th, we've got that. We got the group of guys coming together, and we're ready to go. So I'm pretty pumped about that. But tonight we're going to talk about something that is unique to fathers. Again, you know, we face specific challenges. It's not as cool, you know, to talk about the things that dads are facing in fatherhood. It's not the same as saying, oh, let's pick up some girls, or, oh, you know, let's make all this money in this business on this side. It's no, let's talk about some real matters that fathers have. So it's not as flashy. It's not as, you know, grand. It's not going to catch as much attention. But these are things that men are facing. A lot of fathers today, a lot of fathers who are going to become fathers that are coming up. I have young children myself. You know, Sock, I know you've got a young kid. Steve, I'm not sure your kids' ages, but I mean, guys that have kids that aren't fully grown out of the house, you know, you have to deal with what's going on in society. And George, I wanted to start with you, but the topic is, how do we protect our family from what's going on, you know, in society as a whole? We're red pill aware men. We've all had the discussions. We've all been the conventions. We've shared the stories. We've swapped the notes. That's great for us. How do we protect our wives? How do we protect our children, our sons, our daughters from getting hit by their coaches, their teachers, other parents? You know, how do we, I don't want to say put them in a bubble, but how do we arm them so when they get hit, they've got a defense to knock it down so it doesn't infect their mind? And George, I really wanted to start with you, as you've got the biggest picture, you know, to look at this from young up all to adulthood. You know, you can see what you used to have to deal with to what you're facing now, and any advice you can pass to other fathers.
Yeah. I've seen the social justice movement work its way into schools. I remember I went with my son. I have my oldest child is a daughter. She's 22. And then I have a 19-year-old boy and a 15-year-old boy. The middle boy, I went to a how can I even say this without laughing? A father-like figure and son breakfast, not father and son breakfast.
Jeez, that's a thing.
Like
A father-like. So that means there was stepdads there. That means there was like grandpas there. That means there was, you know, like gay couples where one of the women assumed the role of father. What, you know, and I was just like, oh God. And at the time I remember I was driving a minivan, and I was divorced. And I'll never forget joking around with my son about pulling up in a minivan. This is when minivans were not cool. I still had one because I'm Mr.
I don't know if they are cool yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Mr. Practical. For me, I could load gear in there and camping stuff and 3 kids and you know, and other dads were pulling up in sports cars and I was pulling up in a minivan, and me and my son were just laughing because he knows I'm not materialistic. So I raised my kids with their feet firmly planted on the ground. That's the first thing. Second thing, there was a young man when my one son now, who's pretty jacked, 19 years old, well built, works hard, studious, etc., etc. When he was younger, there was another student that kept pushing him out of the lunch line and stepping in front of him, and the girls would laugh. And he says, "Dad, what should I do?" And I said, "Hit him in the nose, just like lightning fast, just pop, just so fast where your fist is a blur." He says, "But I'll get in trouble." He says, I'll go to the principal's office. I said, "Let me take care of that. I will deal with it." I said, and then I told him a story of a friend that, well, who wasn't a friend at one time when I was in high school. I was the guy that always carried like an armful of books, and I was an easy target because you could push my books out from under my arm and my papers would all go flying down the hallway. And there was a guy that would just always knock my books out of my arm. And I turned around, pop, and just, and we both were dragged down to the principal's office. Well, me and that fella are absolute best friends now. Our families became good friends. And that happens with a lot of guys. If you look at the stories of the founding fathers, when they were at the City Tavern in Philadelphia, only a few miles from me, back in the days, remember when men would roll up their sleeves? They rolled up their sleeves and they, it wasn't like today, where they're going around and they rolled up those puffy ruffle shirts, and they fought over the Constitution with their fists. They disagreed. When they could no longer fight, they went back in and had an ale. Documented.
We've come a long way.
And what's interesting now is that's how things were settled. Go out back, duke it out. You might end up with respect for the other person, and they respect you. I've seen it happen a million times. Now, the very same school that my son was in drama, like I was, drama club and plays and all that kind of thing. I did plays like Dracula, anything by Rodgers and Hammerstein, South Pacific, all those classic stage plays, Broadway plays. His play was on bullying and how not to be a bully. They were actually using the children to promote an agenda. And I raised hell. So I would sit out on my back deck at night when I had the kids and smoke a pipe. We would all be watching American Idol or something. Some people say, oh, you watch that show, all that shit. And I would say, that's the only show where everyone comes together as a family. And we have fun and we vote on the singers. And so for me, it meant a lot. I don't know what would be the equivalent of that today, like The Voice or some America's Got Talent. And it brings families together, and that's what it did for us. So I took a little break. I went out back, fired up a pipe, sitting on the back deck. I get done smoking the pipe, and I turn around, and there is my son at 10 years old, standing in the door, looking through the screen door. And I said, how long were you there? And he says, the whole time. I said, what were you doing? He says, I was watching you. And I got goosebumps because I was out there smoking a pipe, blowing the smoke out, watching the smoke rise and just disappear into the air, a full moon night. And he was watching his father relieve stress, ponder, contemplate, plan. I said, I got up, turned around. I said, you ready for bed? He says, yeah. And then we all got ready for bed. And that was a powerful moment. We need to balance out what the media and what the schools are forcing down our children's throats. They need to see an alternative view. When we have transgenders, is that the right word? I don't know what the word
we'll
for
go with
today.
it because I don't know anymore either. So we'll go with that.
I know more than I should.
So now we have transgender story time in libraries. What the actual fuck? Seriously. I'm angry at that. Because if I wanted to do, let's build a fire or whittle a piece of wood or pitch a tent or how to build muscles story time. Oh no, you could never do that. But if I do the transgender version of Peter Pan or Cinderella, that would be acceptable. And I'm not speaking hyperbole. What used to be hyperbole is now real. That's why we as fathers have to keep it real with our kids. That's where I'm at.
You brought up a great point, and that is what with your son watching you. I think every episode we've had, I've said that our children follow our example, not our advice. But it's also important that we realize it's not the government's responsibility to educate our children. It's not their responsibility to instill morals and values in our children. That is our job as fathers. That is our job as, family men. It is on us to instill those things. What happens in charter schools, public schools, private schools, that's all supplemental to what's happening in the home. That's where you teach the real things they're going to take throughout their life. Now, Socrates, you touched on your child's book, and I want to bring up Jocko Willink released The Way of the Warrior Kid, and that caught on fire and spread. And I think it's because it's the first time we saw a children's book that actually had, hey, you need to man up. It's not okay to get your butt kicked. Go up and smack that kid in the nose. Do what you have to do. Stand up for yourself. Have some confidence and some competence by developing those skill sets, with the random things he has them do throughout the book. I wanted to, if you're willing to share, a little bit on how you're bringing that same, because we talked briefly on it, how you're bringing that to the table, and it's desperately needed, man.
Well, it was interesting. It was kind of a comment that came back years back, when we talk about the 21 convention and a lot of the involvement there, and we're kind of looking at it big picture. It's literally a conversation that rolled in during one of the events in Tampa, probably lasted about 4 a.m. And we're looking at it and we're realizing that the event was nothing but bootstrapping in action. Men picking themselves up, carrying themselves up forward, literally teaching themselves and teaching others along the process. This wasn't just, grand poombahs coming in and giving dissertations and bailing. They were really engaging with everybody and a communication. So the issue was that came up is we're teaching the wrong people. We're teaching the people who are already damaged and broken. We're trying to put them together. And I think that's terribly noble. But the issue is, wouldn't you be vastly more effective if you actually focused on those that were not already damaged? And how do you do that? And basically, who are they? And they're going to be the children. And we came to the conclusion, and this is probably 4 or 5 years ago, that essentially your children are getting politicized, like we just heard, in the school systems, and if you think doing nothing is going to be okay, if they're just going to develop and be fine, you're terribly misguided. And right now I've got a coworker who doesn't understand her daughter, who sits down and says, look, I've been a good conservative. I've done all these things, but I didn't really spend the time with my daughter. And now she's a bleeding heart liberal, and they're having some immense problems in their home. And so we're looking at it and saying, look, there's not a lot of tools for guys to help themselves out. And particularly when we look at divorce stats, I can probably assume that more than 80% of the audience at a convention, it comes from a broken family. These aren't people coming from whole homes that sit down and said, hey, look, I need to develop these things. Because if they had, they're not looking for it. These guys are actually actively involved in their lives, looking to fill the voids, looking to improve themselves. And part of that is the fact of that their lack of fatherhood or father figure in their life. As George is sitting down and saying, they have to expand the scope so large just to get involvement. And so what we realize is how do you tell guys to be a good father when they don't have a good father to imprint or model off of? And so you sit down and say, okay, provide them the tools, show them how to do it. And one of the simple things is, I learned this through a number of psychological study, that children typically only need about 20 minutes of undivided attention of your time to find connection and develop rapport. And it's on a daily basis. And that 20 minutes it doesn't sound like a whole lot. It is a tremendous amount to commit to on a daily basis. But it's undivided time. And to provide a parent an ability to have a storybook that teaches life lessons to have and read. And that's something I do with my daughter every night is I read to her. It's an engagement. We get to sit down and cuddle and read and do different things. And we essentially she's still 3, so she's not fully engaged in vocabulary and language yet. But there's an absolute language that's involved, and she loves books because of it. She'll point to books and pull them out and bring them. So we wanted to provide tools that actually had essentially traditional family values attached to it with a red pill lens and looking at it. And the first one out is going to be called My Red Hat. And essentially it's about a story of a little girl that gets bullied in a store for wearing a red hat. And how, one of the themes that we carry throughout the book series is that you'll find people that are in bubbles, and how to treat people in bubbles, and how to have children engage adults who are misbehaving, or children who are misbehaving, or recognizing misbehavior in themselves, and have these things as teaching tools for families and for fathers in particular. and to have an engagement mechanism to actually involve themselves with their children's lives and make it a little bit easier than say, hey, look, just go do this, or sit in front of a TV set and watch some other pre-programmed element or some cartoon, that you're actually engaging them on kind of life lessons as well.
I think it was Kyle Trouble who introduced me to the term tablet toddlers. Where they're pretty much raised by a screen,
right,
from birth.
Mm-hmm.
So she brought up 20 minutes. Let's say that's the number.
Right.
I guarantee there are men listening to this who are going to listen to this who have yet to dedicate even that to their kids.
Correct.
They say, I'm working on, I've got work to do. I've got this. So let's step back for a second and look at this panel. George has 100,000 subscribers. You don't even see half the shit he's doing. Sometimes he'll share the photos or the real world job he's doing with guys, plus the online stuff, plus the videos. You're writing a book, you've got your job, all the things you're doing on the side. Yep. Steve, you had a list that I can't even remember. Like, you've got the radio going, you've got the stuff on the blog, you've got all the shit you're doing with guys, and then all the stuff on my end. Yet we're all finding the time to dedicate to those who need us. When you sit down at dinner, you remove the phone. There are families that don't eat dinner together. There are fathers out there who don't have individual dates with their kids. Like with my son, it's man time. So we'll go to the field, play catch. But while you're doing that, while you're having dinner, while you're taking your daughter out, hey, how are you? Hey, how was your day? What'd you learn about at school? This is how you start to learn what's going on in their head. And Steve, with the many things you have going on, I want to know, how do you balance the life of your mission for, pursuing what it is you are as a man, as well as those that you're leading, how you dedicate time to them as well?
Well, as a dad of a 22-year-old, a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 14-year-old, it's a lot to juggle, but it's a great thing to do because I'm a big kid. I watch cartoons, I play video games, and I used to eat cereal, but I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't do that anymore. It's kind of stop me from doing that. But the thing is that I always try to instill in my children, and first off, I love them. They're me. I always tell all my kids at the end of the day, you're a Williams. Whatever you do, you're a Williams. If you turn on that TV, that's how a Williams does it. If you open the door, that's how a Williams does it. You are a Williams. I also talk to them about everybody doesn't get a trophy. So don't go out in that world expecting to get things handed to you. You get off your ass, you work hard for it. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get beat up, but you got me in your corner to be there for you, to talk to you through those things. Like George was saying, as far as fighting goes, I always tell my kids, look, don't ever start a fight. Don't ever start a fight, but you are allowed to protect yourself. And if you protect yourself in a fight, I'm going to go to the school. I'm going to hug you, and we're going out for video games and ice cream, because I want you to realize you're not in trouble for protecting your name, because I stress the name and the foundation of everything, that your last name is the most important thing that you have as a person. So I want to make sure that my kids understand that it's going to be tough out there. Some people are not going to like you because of the color of your skin. Some people are going to like you because of the color of your skin. Some people might not give you a job. Some people might give you jobs. But at the end of the day, you got to come home and love that person you see in the mirror. And there were some things I always say real quick. I always teach them to have what is known as a self-definition. Know who you are. What is your definition of you? Because all my kids are different. They're all me, but they're all different in their own unique ways. But I asked them and I talked to them. My sons, I take them to steak, or we're watching WWE wrestling, the pay-per-view. We talk. My daughter's a little bit different. It's always dad, because I always tell them boys are nasty and disgusting, all that stuff. But I always let them know that at the end of the day, dad loves them. But also I teach them self-awareness and understanding. Why do you do what you do? Always remember, as a Williams, when you say something, you own it, you back it up, but you also know why you say it. Don't just say anything. Don't just do things. Know why you're doing it, because people out there don't know that kind of stuff. And that's what's going to separate you from everybody else. Well, of course, because you're a Williams, and I keep pushing that narrative. And last but not least, I teach them self-focus. At the end of the day, when maybe the girls are teasing you, or maybe you had a bad day at school or something. Come home, self-focus, reflect on your day, and figure out what it is that I did wrong, what did I do right, but importantly, what can I do better at the end of the day? So it's basically that I push on them all the time. But I mean, I don't sleep, man. So I only get about 3-4 hours of sleep, but I enjoy my life, man.
That's motivating as hell. To see that intentional time, though, when you look at, you can catch your kid 2 steps off course instead of 2 miles off course if you talk to them daily instead of talking to them once every other month.
Yep.
Or you wait until they're in trouble and then you're like, oh, what's wrong? Had you asked them what was wrong 3.5 months ago, they would have said, Dad, I'm getting bullied. Dad, I'm struggling with this subject, whatever it is. But if you don't ever open that door, they're not going to walk through it because they're kids. They don't know that yet. That's your job, is to facilitate them to that point. That point.
You have to establish the lines of communication before you need it, particularly with children and family and partners, because if you don't have it, when times are challenging, it won't be there. You won't be prepared for it. You won't be able to rely on it. And more importantly, they won't be able to rely on it, not just you.
Also, the way you say you are Williams, that builds a tribe mindset. This is my clan. So when I talk to my kids, it's funny you said that. Same thing. So you're talking about WWE and stuff. My son, we don't have cable, but somehow he's got hooked on wrestling. So we're watching this, these dudes just smash each other. He's like, oh, I'd be able to get up if he did that to me. I was like, of course you would. You would get up because you're a Drew. That's what you would never quit unless you could not move your body. You would stand up and you'd face him like a man. And it's awesome to see that. But you also instill, this is my tribe. This is my clan. This is my family. I don't want to disappoint them. We have a standard. We've got to reach that standard. And there are some parents who, your kids rise to the standard you accept, not the one you expect. So if you're accepting C's, if you're accepting D grades, they're going to do that. If you're accepting complaints and excuses and only playing video games and never working out, that's what they'll do. It isn't until you set a standard in which they're going to follow and you say, no, you're not going to, that TV is going to get thrown out this fucking window before you get to play another game because you haven't done any workouts or school or whatever the case is. But again, it comes back to you setting a standard. Now, when you have a son and a daughter, they're going to be facing different challenges. So do you guys raise your kids the same, your son and daughter, or do you have a different approach? I have my own, but I want to hear what you guys have going on when it comes to girl problems versus boy problems. Do you want to jump on that, George?
Yeah, I felt I talk differently to my daughter than I do to my sons. I think my daughter has a different sense of humor than my sons, and she's very political, and she sends me memes all the time, and she's a deep thinker. I don't get that from my sons. My sons will call me dad. She calls me daddy. That's innate. I didn't set that precedent. There's something, how can I put it? We love to say men and women are different, and I have seen that right from the get-go. I frequently send my children texts that just out of the blue. I love you and I believe in you. Thank you, Daddy. Thanks, Dad. Daughter, thank you, Daddy. Sons, thanks, Dad. They are different. Their sense of humor is different. The way they approach problems and conflict is different. There is something different between a father and a daughter than there is between a father and a son. A lot of people say there's no difference. I completely disagree with that. I can recite poetry to my son, funny poetry, before he would go to sleep. With my daughter, I would sing her a song. So with the son, it was more like a little rap kind of thing. With my daughter, it was more of a song. And then there would be times where I would leave a word out, and then she would fill in the word. Never happened in a million years with the son. So I started seeing differences right away. Right away. Now, every kid is different, but there's definitely differences in the genders. And I think fathers play a very unique role. Stepfathers play a very unique role in the lives of children. And when my oldest son brought his girlfriend to meet me this past summer, I thought that was interesting, and I engaged with the young lady, and I'm interested in seeing what her opinion is of me. Not that it would matter to me. I'm not going to change my behavior because of what someone thinks of me, but because of a man who is not with their mother, I can imagine maybe on the ride home, she might have said, he's actually not that bad. He's not what your mother said he was. He was actually kind of a cool dude. And I thought, I was kind of like thinking in my mind, what was their conversation like on the way home after they left spending time with me? There's a difference. There's a difference between boys and girls. There's a difference between men and women. There's a difference in the way that we treat daughters and the way that we treat sons.
From birth, I completely agree, to get that stated from the onset. People would say, you raise them differently. You're damn right I raise them differently. They respond differently. They need different things from me. And the biggest thing I immediately saw was the macro versus the micro. My son came out of the womb with a bat and a ball in his hand. The kid could throw a ball across the room before he could walk or crawl. My daughter is 6 years old, and she's more likely to throw the ball behind her, trying to throw it forward, than she is to get it to where it's trying to go at 6. But if you told her, write me a story, she'll sit there and very elegantly write her name out, write all the words, and you go to my son, and he's just like, pencil on the paper, just doesn't give a shit. She's very micro. She's about the small things. I have 2 puppies right now. I can tell you right now, she'll be holding them and petting them and nurturing them. My son won't be. He might pet them, but he's sitting there and they're just dogs. But if they were to go bite her, she's going to get afraid and not know what to do when they're biting her dress, or like if strings are hanging off her clothes. My son will run over and just snatch them up, pick them both up, both arms, and just walk them outside and put them outside. It's totally different. Their responses, their motivators, what drives them, what pulls them back. And the same thing, George, you were saying that kind of like hit home. Had to mute myself. It's like, my daughter, Daddy, I love you so much, Daddy. Big hugs. My son, thanks, Dad. Have a good night, Dad. I'll see you later, Dad. Have fun. It's amazing. And in the chat, and then you were talking about saying, I believe in you. Do you know how many men, and I'm sure all of you can agree with this, you've all probably had the same damn emails I've gotten. The dad never said I was proud of you. The dad was never there just to encourage you. Could you imagine the amount of belief in self you could instill, the men that are listening now, telling your kids from the beginning, or even starting now and going forward, hey, I'm proud of what you're doing. I believe in what it is that you're doing. And this is awesome. They're going to fucking cry. They're going to melt. Like, oh my God, like all they want is dad to love them. And there's so many dads out there who just don't realize your family can't read your mind. You've got to say it. You've got to put yourself in the line and be like, look, this is me. I'm not just this stoic creature over here. I'm really fucking proud of you as my son, my daughter, my wife, whomever it is. Now go out and do great things. Believe in yourself. And all of a sudden, society can't break into them. They can't erode that foundation because it's so fucking strong. There are no gaps to sneak into.
My generation, we grew up with Johnny Cash singing A Boy Named Sue, about a man that named his son Sue. Gave him a girl's name because he knew the world was tough. And in order for that young man to make it in this tough world, he had to give him a girl's name so the boy would fight his way until adulthood. And then the end of the song, the father and son meet each other and they're getting into a fist fight. And it's we rolled in the mud and the blood and the beer. I called him something. He called me a son. And I mean, they were just, and then at the very end of the song, you got to look up the lyrics to A Boy Named Sue. He says, because the world is tough, I knew I wasn't going to be around to raise you. What I did was purposeful. And I think as flawed as that is, and as country music as that is, I think a lot of older guys can relate to that. I never got I got one letter from my dad when I was in college. One letter. And I have it somewhere. But that letter meant a lot. Now, Mom writing letters, never forgot a date, a birthday, whatever, cards, letters, the whole bit. Dad, one letter. Do I wish he sent me more? I didn't grow up in a lovey-dovey. I never heard the words "I love you" ever growing up, but I came from that kind of family. Now, we say it all the time. I tell my children that now. But I didn't doubt for 1 second, because I'll never forget getting into an argument with my father. In the 80s, it was very popular to blame your parents for the way you are. Very popular. There was a whole backlash against parents. And I remember saying to my dad, "Never once did you tell me that you loved me." And he just was quiet and listened to my bullshit. And I knew I was going to get it when he said, "Are you done yet?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You had a roof over your head, didn't you? You had 3 meals a day. You went on vacations to Cape Cod every year. You had clothing. You had new bikes. You had a skateboard. You went camping. You were in," and it kept building. He goes, "Don't tell me I don't love you." And I just was like, holy shit. I got caught up in that new age bullshit that my dad needed to be like a fucking woman to express his love to me, when his house, the roof, the predictable food on the table every night, when I bitched and moaned that I couldn't go out playing with my friends, when it was time for him to change the brakes on the car, he says, "You're not going anywhere. You're helping me change the brakes." So I'd sit there and hold the hubcap as he was taking the brake parts off and putting them in the hubcap. And he says, "Okay, now this is how you decompress a cylinder. Watch. You're not watching. Look at me when I'm doing this." And I thank him for teaching me those things forcibly. I did not have the kind of dad that took me to karate on Monday night, soccer on Tuesday night, Russian and Mandarin on Wednesday night, and yoga on Thursday night. It was like, motherfucker, you better be raking that lawn when I pull in the driveway, to the point where me and my brothers would actually get a rake, because we knew Dad, we saw his car coming down the street. Quick, Dad's coming home from work. And we acted like we were working around the house, just to like pacify the anger that we know was going to be there if we were just hanging out. So, did he ever say, "I love you"? No. Did he show me that he loved me? Hell fucking yes. Case closed.
It's a fucking solid case, man.
Hell yeah, man.
That's perfect.
Hey, Steve, nice to meet you, man. I never met you before. I just want to say,
Yeah,
I'm
George.
a big fan.
No,
big fan,
I'm a big fan of yours too, man. That's why I say puff pass on the pipe, brother. Come on.
So Steve and Sock, they introduced each other earlier. So this is a whole panel of let's get together. I met Steve, the last Red Man group, or the last Patriarch. So it's good. It's great to see the panels like this coming together. And on the point though about your father, when you talk about presence versus presence, meaning you being there versus buying people something, nobody's going to remember the 10 things you bought them. They will remember that time you showed up as a dad, that time you were there, that time, when nobody was understanding, you sat down and listened. As a father, you've got to be involved in the physical realm. You have to show up and be there. And that means putting some of the trying to do yourself to the side. Steve, you're saying that you don't sleep, and that's how you get it done. You could sleep later if you didn't hang out with your kids, but because you dedicate time to the kids, right, you got to push some of the things you were going to do personally to the side, to the left. So now you can do that later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I say, hey, listen, I definitely treat my boys different than my girls. I always tell my girls that, I always tell my kids I love them, but I tell my daughters, hey, like I say, there's only one man that loves you, baby, and that's daddy. Always remember that. I don't care what those filthy guys do. There's only one man that loves you. But I'll talk about my daughters first, because my daughters, I treat them like a soft shell egg. I am butter. I am melted. I hug. I tickle. I do what I call daddy claw. I've been daddy clawing their asses since they were little kids. Because I'm like, oh, wait. What'd you say? Oh, wait a second. It's coming now. They like, Dad, stop. I say, it's coming now. And daddy claw, and I'll chase their asses all around the house. And I'll tickle them, and I'll hug them. And I love that interaction with my daughters. But my boys, no. My boys, we roughhouse it. My sons, look, it's either going to be a pillow fight or a wrestling match to a point where the wife is saying, y'all got to stop. Y'all going to break stuff. Because I'm always wrestling with my sons or doing moves, or he wants to do his wrestling moves on me, trying to get me to tap out and all that other stuff. So we're always constantly, I'm just, because I like the nature. I always think about the nature, that the lions teach the cubs, how to hunt by doing things, and I'm always toughening my boys up. If my sons fall off of something like when they fell off a bike, you better get your ass up. I don't want to see no tears. Boys don't cry. Now my daughters fall off a bike. Oh, it's come here, baby. It's okay. It's okay. Daddy's got you. Daddy's got you. It's all right. And, like I said, I'm butter for my daughters, but I'm tough with my boys. Even in relationships, when my boys have girlfriends over, I'm saying, well, ma'am, how you doing? My name is Steve. I'll meet the girls and all nice. But when my daughters have guy friends over, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in my house? What the fuck are you? Who are you? Where you at? And, I want to put the fear in these motherfuckers that, hey, this is daddy. Daddy run this shit. But at the end of the day, man, it's you got to teach your boys. And again, one thing I love the most with my sons also, I'll hug my son. It's either a high five or a hug when I see my sons. When I come in or they come in from school, they'll come in my office. He'll either give me a high five or a hug. And what I'll do on the top for my sons, I kiss them on the top of the crown, at the top of the head, right on the top of the head. I'll give them a little mud every once in a while. But I'm like, hey man, you my dog, you my Williams, you my boy, you're my son. I push. You are my king. You my boy. And my daughters, I just give them a daddy hug. Just always a daddy hug. Asking them how their day is, and just trying to talk to them and try to help them maneuver through life. And with kid gloves, because sometimes, girls are so emotional. Sometimes they don't like talking as much as boys do, and sometimes they try to keep it in. So sometimes it's a fine line of trying to pull out information without nagging them or something like that. So like when we're driving in a car, we're singing like hip hop songs from the 80s. They love that shit for some reason. Or we'll sing wiggle songs that we used to sing when they were kids and stuff. So I mean, they get tired of me because they know I'm a big ass kid, but they enjoy it because for some reason I'm like the cool dad in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, all the kids are like, I wish I had a dad like you, and they love hearing that kind of stuff because they love when they have people over. They love the interaction. It's not show. It's just me showing, hey, look, you're my kids. I got your back. But my sons, I will punch your ass in the motherfucking chest. Don't fuck up. Hey, keep your honor roll going. My daughters, keep your shit going. Daddy loves you. But, but boys and girls, they're totally different treatment at this household.
Steve, man, if there was a camera on our households, people would be like, you fucking like the neighbors, like you know each other. But my kids, when I come home from work, if they don't come running out, I walk in. It's 3 high fives and a flex to my son, and my daughter jumps in my arms and she hugs me and I spin her around. Dude, it's the same exact thing. Like, it's fucking wild. It's almost as if there's a universal aspect to masculinity. Man. Who knew? If you're a positive man, who knew? Something I do want to point out. You said, you're like a grown child. I have a piece. It's called Man, the Mature Child. We talk about women being the oldest teenager. I think men, we hit a point where you never lose that boyish charm. It can be beaten out of you. I think a lot of guys who have had their masculine nature taken from them because they're trying to follow the imperative, I think they lose it. But I think if you believe in yourself and you're confident in who you are as a man, you never lose that desire to go out and play in the mud, go run around. I'm the same way. And that's important because you're the guy who stops the wife from coming and saying, oh, don't do this, don't jump off the rock. play it calm, play it safe. And I'm like, no, jump off the fucking roof. If you get hurt, that's on you.
Yo, yeah,
ahead,
well,
jump. Figure it out.
But that's why I always say real quick. I always tell everyone, don't let the boy die in you. That because the boy was the one that he was fearless. He was the one that saw that tree and was like, I'm gonna climb this tree, and I don't care what the risk is. And if I fall and break my arm, and once I heal, I'm gonna climb that tree again. Having fear, he's fearless, and he's had his adventures. He's creative, and he has imagination. And that's why I try to tell guys, don't be stuffy. Live this life like it's your last. Have fun. And even it rolls over to my old lady, because you know she'll put a picture on my ass and tell me go to Walmart with a picture on my ass, or she'll paint my. I hate to give. I'm gonna tell y'all this because we men shit here. She painted my nails pink one time and told me to go to Walmart. I was sleeping. She snuck in and painted my. I mean, we play jokes. I mean, I did put some laxative and some brownies and got her back, but that's it over there. Yeah, got to get her back. But no, I'm just saying at the end of the day, don't let the child die in you. All you guys, don't let that go, because that's that fire that pushes you to be greater than you ever thought you can be. When you have that imagination, when you thought you could fly in the air, you took something and tied it around a towel and tied it around your neck, or you got on your bike and you thought you were flying and stuff. You can carry that over into manhood. Just don't let that die in you, man.
I endorse that 100%.
Yeah, I'll totally second that as well. One of the things I found is that with my 3-year-old daughter, I actually have to teach her how to play, and actually engage socially with people and other kids, and how to use particular toys like building blocks or whatever. You just can't spill the toy out and expect them to kind of pick it up and do it. You have to engage them and show them and kind of do all that. And so I just kind of take personal pride to make sure that, on a very regular basis, I'm doing a whole gamut of things along those lines, and, like you're saying, picking a kid up and flying through the air. My daughter happened to watch, my partner watch, Mary Frances watch some Harry Potter things where the kids were on a broom, and so she gets on this little dustpan broom. It's a little wicker thing, and she'll get on it and she'll say which high, and I will just pick her up and fly her like she's some Harry Potter character flying through the air, and she absolutely fucking enjoys the shit out of it. And it gets to the point that it annoys my partner, but I kind of work it into kind of a workout pattern. When you're holding a 35-pound child out in front of you and you're moving around through the highest, going high speed up down, and I'll intentionally do curls with her, and I just kind of make that kind of part of doing physical labor, in which case I don't normally do with my professional job. So I kind of roll those sort of things into it as well. But you look to engage the child as an individual, as an adult, and realize this is your legacy going forward. How do you want them engaging? And if they don't know how to engage multiple range of generation of people, kids their own age, a little bit older, adults, they're going to have problems. And I one of the things I really kind of push is to make sure that they have a broad spectrum of social outlets as well, whether it's the grandparents or going down to the science center or going to a variety of different parks throughout a number of different neighborhoods. So she's exposed to that specifically. And a lot of this is very consciously driven. And so a lot of times we'll put her on kind of a schedule as to where we're hitting, make sure that there's variety, interest, a comfort level with this so she understands it, but to make sure that they get exposed. They're not just sort of like a tablet kid and letting a TV and a tablet raise them sitting in a living room floor while adults hit their iPhones and watch whatever hell they're doing, and being together but in complete isolation. And you just see way too much of that.
Knowing you, I picture your kid walking like the kids playing with their Legos, and she's like, that foundation's not structurally sound. This building over here sucks ass. You need to rebuild that bullshit.
It kind of helps.
Like, you're 4 years old.
I'm an architect, so I'll be honest. Some of the shit we're building is pretty goddamn cool. I mean, you're like,
I knew it.
You just don't stack it. You stack it, turn it, and then let's do a couple other things, and then you have to make it fun, and you got to wreck it all, And so she gets a huge kick out of all that. But again, that's part of the lesson plan, or how to do some of those things. So I will also engage, one of the things I was most proud of, and it's going to sound horrible, there was these little glow sticks. So, you kind of break them, the glow sticks. Well, for Halloween, they actually had little swords and battle axes. So kind of being kind of Scandinavian descent, I got a bunch of battle axes for the home and showed her the proper grip on one and how to kind of hold it and go, and then cleave with this damn thing. So she's doing this kind of at 3 years old. So we'll do that. But at the same time, I'll switch around and actually have high tea with her. So she has a full-on little tea set. We'll set up a little tablecloth. We'll make fancy, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at our hearts and set it up. So she learns how to engage and entertain a man, not in just play and entertaining, but to do it in a proper feminine form and be polite. Tell me about your day. How about this? Let's invite one of her stuffed animals. Let's engage whoever it is. Make sure people are getting served. All those kind of conditioning responses that she's getting ingrained from the very beginning. So there's this, energy play with being, exposed to a masculine side, but also an appropriate way in which a woman would engage a man with standards and be held in a particular regard. And if you want to make sure that they understand that, you have to engage the behavior before they're even consciously aware of it. Yeah, don't try to make a whore a lady. And too many guys chasing ass do just that.
There's a quote in the chat I want to bring up. It's from Centro Americano. He said, "These men are describing the best childhood a kid can have. No smartphones, no video games, no internet required." So on that subject, you've got to straddle the line. This isn't about being I'm chopping the cord. We're no electronics. We're going trad life. We're going by candles and that's it. We're going to kill our food. We're going to eat it. Man, my kids have laptops. My kids, they do watch TV. But the thing is, I'm intentional with the time. If the sun is out, they're outside. If it's raining, they can come inside. You read a book. Once you've read a book, you played in the house, you've done your work, you've done your schoolwork. Cool. We can watch a show. You know what you're allowed to watch? The Magic School Bus, Mythbusters, How It's Made, or the Titan games with The Rock. Because all those are educational. They will stimulate the mind. You're not sitting there watching SpongeBob. You're not watching fucking I don't even know what there is. SpongeBob and Teen Titans are the only kid shows I know. I don't let them watch those things. Steve was talking about wrestling. Like I said, my son's new one of that. That's like a dessert. That is like a special treat. Like, we're going to watch wrestling. And my kid's like, oh shit. Like, I get to watch wrestling with dad. And it means something. That's a bonding moment. My daughter, she wanted to watch, I think it was Barbie or something. And I'm always like, nah, we're not watching that. But just like my son with wrestling, I'm like, all right, you can watch Barbie. And she's like, holy shit. And she gets to watch an episode of Barbie or 2 episodes of Barbie. But that's it. That's an hour of TV for their whole day. We're done. We'll have movie nights. We'll have little intentional times like that. But usually we're reading. We'll play board games. We'll do things. So you've got to balance it. Your children, all of our children are going to grow up in a world where technology is in their schools. They've got to be able to navigate those waters. But that doesn't have to be their life. And that's on you as the parent. There's no excuse. If your kid's watching TV 6 hours a day, that's your fault, not theirs.
And what I find interesting about that is that if you actually not just sort of go out to engage them, but if you actually have an activity that can compete, and it doesn't take a whole lot, your presence, they're starved for it, that they'll actually engage that. And I found that my daughter, who has a tablet, will actually put that down to actually engage with dad and do things with dad, and just to have a variety of things, whether it's me giving her horsey rides or whatever the hell it is. Probably one of the best $10 I ever spent was we got her the little stick ponies that you put between your legs and ride around the house. So she was a kind of a TV show that she kind of liked with horses, and we got her some horse dolls, but we got those because they were going to be physical. And rather than just getting one for her, I got her a whole damn stable of these things. So there's like at least 4 of these horses in the house that she will hand everybody a horse, and the whole family goes for a horse ride in the house that she leads or you lead or do whatever it is. But you're engaging physically rather than doing other things with tablets or those other things. And again, it wasn't terribly costly to kind of do that, as opposed to get her a doll horse that only she's going to play with. And this was a great way to interact and have, physicality to it and change patterns. And, sometimes she has 2 horses or, whatever the case may be. And, just structure the notion of physical play being as important as kind of cerebral play or dexterity play and, with stacking toys. But I'm very conscious about it. I look at what are the developmental things that she needs at that life arc and sit down and say, as a parent, as a man, it's my job to kind of make sure she's exposed to those things.
Yeah, one thing I always do when I was small, I'm sure you remember when we were all small, there was always that house, the Hangout House. There was always that, when you went outside, it was always that one family that was like, man, let's just go hang out over there. Well, nowadays, because a lot of people don't raise their kids, a lot of kids are drinking, or no offense, Bruno, they're smoking, yeah, I mean, but not, I mean, yeah. But, they're doing a lot of things. And when my kids were small, that was one of the things I insisted on. We're going to be the Hangout House. We're going to have the pool, we'll have the wrestling, we'll have all the stuff set up so all the kids come here, not only because I can watch my kids, because sometimes it's hard to trust. It's hard to trust. I mean, I trust my kids when they go somewhere else. I just don't trust the parents on how, if they have liquor bottles all in the house, or, just have a bunch of stuff in there. That's number one. But number two, the thing that I always did with my kids, especially in the summertime, as soon as school got out and they wanted to throw all their papers in the air and they're like, yeah, it's summertime, we would go right to the teacher, the teacher school store or something like, it's like a store with teacher stuff in there or stuff for students. We would prepare them for the next year, the next grade. So they would have to spend a few hours reading and doing the mathematics of whatever the grade of the grade ahead, so they can have that curve. My whole thing is I only reward good behavior. I don't reward the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to make daddy mad. That you don't want to upset daddy, because if daddy's mad, then like you say, we cutting everything out. But the best thing I love the most is what kills them the most. I can take away the Xboxes and I can take away the TVs and I can take away their iPhones and their laptops. But what hurts them the most is when daddy's upset or disappointed. That kills them. And that's how I set it up with my kids. So, they know that, look, it's like they're anomalies in school because they don't get in trouble. They're really polite. They're really respectful. And when they have their friends over, they're just amazed at how the atmosphere is. My daughters, they have I get them their little rabbits. My daughters like bunny rabbits and all that other cake ass stuff. So I got to buy them bunny rabbits. I did name the bird Negan. I bought a bird. His name is Negan, but at least I named him. I named that damn bird. But I'm just saying though that those are the things that you got to do at an early age. And like you say, man, you want to take away the TV. You want to do more family time. Like when football comes on Sundays, we all together watching the Dallas Cowboys. We're all spending time together. Everybody's got their jerseys on. We're repping our Dallas Cowboys. So, we do a lot of things together. We travel, we go places, let them see things, and we just have great experiences, man.
When you talk about doing things together also, Sock, you're talking about the horses that you bought. My daughter has a giant easel, so she can go downstairs. We got the giant roll of paper, so she can paint her freaking heart out. Yeah. And on the other side of the basement, we have a tee with a net. So even if it's raining or snowing like it is now, he's just sitting down on the training. Whack. All you hear in the basement, like, just go down and play. He goes down and just for fucking hours, man. He just swings up the tee. His swing plane is fucking amazing.
That's awesome.
We used to do a thing. I remember when Andrew Zimmer first came out with the show Bizarre Foods. So when I would have the kids every other weekend, we did Bizarre Foods. So one weekend we would go to a Jewish deli and get tongue and make tongue sandwiches. I'm in Philadelphia, so there's a Pennsylvania Dutch influence. So there's a lot of people that eat strange meats. Pennsylvania Dutch people don't waste anything. There's all kinds of weird meats. I mean, things with eyeballs that are looking at you. And we would have a bizarre food every time I got the kids. And they got excited about it to the point where we went to Cabela's, and they had boxes of worms, edible worms, ants, and grasshoppers. So we had a weekend where we were trying like these worms and grasshoppers and stuff like that. And I videotaped the kids as if it was like a TV show. And I still have those videos, and it was hilarious. So that lasted probably about 10 or 12 weekends, which is, 25 weeks, because I would get kids every other weekend. So we did bizarre foods, and I got the most bizarre things that I could find, bizarre ethnic foods. We did a root beer tour. So every other weekend, I would get a different type of root beer and see what the difference is between the ones made with honey, the ones made with cane sugar, the ones made with molasses. We did that. We went on a nacho tour. Every restaurant has its own version of nachos, and it's the cheapest thing you can get at a restaurant. You get a big mountain of nachos, and we would vote on what restaurant made the best nachos, that type of thing. And then I always, whenever I had any bread or rolls that went bad, I would put them in a bag and put it in the freezer. And then we would always go and feed geese and ducks at the local pond, and had a nice time doing that. So there was always activities. There was never, when you're a single father, you pack as much fathering you can into a Wednesday night and every other weekend, and you're run, to the point where I would sometimes look at the kids and say, you guys want to take a nap? And we would just all pile on daddy's bed and take an afternoon nap, because I'm used to just running them constantly and trying to do a week's worth of dad stuff, because I ended up being the fun parent. When you are the parent that they visit, which I friggin' hate that thing, because most of my children's life I was a visitor and not a full-time parent, you try to pack all that parenting in, because you kind of feel guilty that you're not there for the everyday stuff. So they're with you on your weekend, which I despise the whole, well, this is my weekend with the kids and all of that nonsense. So I tended to overbook their time with me, because I wanted to pack as much as I can in there. And I did a lot of videoing everything from playtime to sports to fake TV shows. And at the time, I was on television, I was in the media, and we would do fake QVC things. I would say, just pick something off a shelf and sell it like you're on TV. And we did fake QVC programming and then replay the video, and we'd be laughing the whole time. And I have those videos to this day, and it's precious. Absolutely. It's one of those things where, if the house is on fire and you only have a couple seconds to grab stuff before the house burns down to the ground, I would grab my computer, because on my hard drive, I have those memories. And those memories are in my kids' heads. To this day, I can still text them and say, do you remember when we ate goats? We got a goat's head at the Muslim store. Do you remember when we had the worms? Do you remember when we went and had this or that? And and they still remember that stuff. And I'm actually surprised. But it's because I had to pack a lot of parenting in a very short period of time.
I think that those are awesome memories, man. Like, we just hearing that, have nothing to do with, like, dude, that's fucking great. Like, that's some classic shit, man. And I might be stealing that bizarre foods one.
Yeah, I was about to say, the bizarre foods, the nacho trade. Yeah, that's going to my back pocket.
Definitely. I'm not going to give you credit either. I'm like, guys, what did I just think of? We're going to do this.
Yeah.
I was looking at, so as I was listening to that entire thing, there are a lot of guys who, and, we hit the hour and a half mark. So we're coming up to the closing. I put the thing out. If there's any questions, they'll toss them out there. But There are a lot of guys who come home and they're exhausted and they're like, look, let's just watch TV. All right, go to bed. And before you know it, Monday through Friday have gone and all you've done is sit down and watch TV. And the weekend's there. So Saturday, you're like, I've got to relax from work. So I'm going to start day drinking, or I'm going to start fucking just doing these other side projects. I'm going to catch up on my, you're always on your phone. And then Sunday, you're dreading Monday. At no point did you have an intentional bonding moment with your family. At no point did you break the routine. And when I was listening, the biggest thing that was popping in my head the whole time you're talking, George, is you're just breaking the routine. You're doing things that you don't normally do. You're doing things that are outside the norm. And that's what a lot of guys need to do. And you'd be surprised, and just totally plugging shamelessly for Men of March. When we go through it, each day is a challenge, and each day we're having our chats. Each day we're doing video discussions. And the biggest thing from these guys is it's like you have to give them permission to do things differently. So for the guys watching this, it's okay for you to say, hey, you know what? Today we're having a movie night. But that's not just saying I want to rent a movie. We're going to get a blanket fort going. We're going to get fucking popcorn popping on the kettle. I'm going to come with a flashlight and escort you to where you're going to sit. All of a sudden, that movie is no longer just a movie. It's a fucking movie. We're going to go out. We're going to go to the zoo. You're not just going to the zoo. We've got these 10 things we got to find. We've got to find the history of this animal. We've got to find the footprint of that. All of a sudden, going to the zoo is not just going to the zoo. You have permission to do things the way you want to do them. You don't need your wife to say it's okay. You don't need society to say it's okay. You don't need to be normal. If you want to go out there and do some fucking awesome shit, like that child inside you, used to do, chase that glory, make things huge, even though you're just walking through the woods, you're on a fucking adventure. You can do that for your kids. You can pass that on. And that makes just a walk in the woods a walk. You have the permission to do it. You just got to go do it, man. And I'm not seeing any questions. So,
I think there were a couple.
You guys got anything?
Yeah. One of the questions that was interesting was how to train either a daughter or not to become a thought, or how to train boys to kind of be in red pill. And I think that starts with example. We're mammals, so we're gonna learn by imprinting. If they don't have a father that they can imprint positive traits to, they're going to go astray. So I'm in a particular situation in which my partner actually has 2 sons. So I actually have 2 stepsons that are older living in the household, and they're raised by a single mother. And for most cases, they kind of take on a lot of these beta traits, and they're raised by a single mother. So by having all of a sudden my exposure to them in their life is given an absolute counterbalance to what they previously had experienced. And part of that's being able to say no or no ma'am to their mother and hold kind of ground as a man, or hold position on certain things, not disrespectfully, but to be able to sit down and say, look, if you can't do this with your mother or your sister, who's a 3-year-old at this point and a little tyrant, you're not going to be able to do this with the other women in your life. And be able to have those conversations, and there were a couple of cases, one of which I absolutely, we talk about stealing somebody else's idea. I watched a comedy show where this guy was telling about how his father kind of did something, and the boys in the house were kind of misbehaving. So we're going to go some errands, and I just grabbed them saying, you're coming with me. We're going to the hardware store. We're going to do the following things. And they're kind of just generally acting up, and mom happened to be coming along for the ride. So it's a group of us. And I just sat down and said, look, who wants to go for McDonald's? Who wants to go through McDonald's drive-through? And of course, at that point, they're all now engaged. Yeah, I want this. I want this. And so what did I do is I drove through McDonald's drive-through and ordered 1 black coffee. And that was it. And we drove off. And they got to be able to drive through the McDonald's drive-through, but Dad was just a cold-hearted son of a bitch at that moment. And you have to kind of at times sit down and say, you're crossing the line, and I can be this cold, and not be necessarily abusive or in their face yelling and screaming. But at a certain point, you realize he's got this capability of doing this, and they kind of have to get a sense of that, because if they don't understand your depth as a man, nor are they going to respect it. But also having boundaries, and understand that it's not just walls and barriers, but you also have to have a gate. So for example, coming from the West, there's kind of a phrase that comes from the range, is that company arrives through the gate or through the road. Trouble always comes from the range. And so you have to teach them good behaviors on how to come through the gate, or the road, rather than coming in off the range, and how to treat people and hold situations counter to that. And again, they learn this by example. You have to show it to them in action. They have to be exposed to it. And if you're not engaged and they're not engaged with you on a regular basis, there's absolutely no way you're going to sit down and give the kind of like my dad gave me the birds and the bees conversation. He was forced to have a conversation with his son, having never laid down the communication lines to make sure that when it was needed, that they were there. And so we had the talk, but it was just a one-way conversation. So I just make sure that I'm engaged with them. I force them to do things with me, whether they want to or not. We make it kind of fun. But at the same time, man, you just every once in a while just have to kind of lay it down and no, this is a man you're fucking with and not one to trifle with.
So I did find the questions. I had to scroll down. So one of the ones, and I'll just fire them to each guy. So for the panelists with older children, how do you navigate negative influences from your kids' friends with parents who are NPCs? Meaning parents aren't involved, who don't give a shit. Kids are raised by what's cool and trendy. You know, Steve and George, you guys want to tackle this as you both have older children?
Hey, George, beauty before age, man. You got first. You go first, sir.
I would say, example, we teach, as men, we always teach younger men regarding women, believe what she does, not what she says. And I think, I think that goes for everybody in life. Believe what they do, not what they say. And I think our actions, they're being observed by our kids. If our children are watching us scream at the TV at a politician that we don't like, guess what they're learning? They're learning how to scream and have a tantrum with things that they don't agree on. That's why I turned the TV off many years ago. When before we would go into the city, like in Philadelphia, we call it Center City. We would take the train in because there's nowhere to park. But they would see Dad prepare himself safety-wise. I won't go any further than that, as we were going into the city, and they would feel safe. And they knew you don't go somewhere without being aware of your environment if you're going into the city. I live 4 miles outside of the city of Philadelphia. When I go into Philly, nothing against cities, but I do think most of them are shitholes. You have to be prepared for the worst. Expect the best, but be prepared for the worst. So my children watched Dad kind of prep himself for the worst. I never had to step up to the plate and do anything about anything, but they watched Dad in his preparedness. And I think that's something that stayed with them. I think when it comes to everyday life, I think moms are more emotional. Women are more emotional than men. It is a feminine trait, regardless of what anyone says. And I believe that kids look to us for, I don't want to say stoicism, but for a more rational, think before we speak type of behavior. To not be as emotional in solving problems. To step back, take a few breaths, let me think about this for a minute, rather than just spewing out something. I think we get to model that for our children. I think with the outside influence with older children, kids don't always have to be communicating with you to respect you. That's one of the faults that I have, is I believe that sometimes I feel like my kids are ignoring me. And they might be to a certain extent. I would love to hear from them more often. When I do, I'm actually quite pleased. I don't think any parent is let down when their children contact them in any form or fashion, whether it be telling a joke or texting a meme or something funny like that. But I think to be a refuge for our kids, when my daughter was, I guess, 12, maybe 12. Is that when girls get their period at 12, something like that? My daughter comes home from school, not to my home, to her mom's home, and calls me and says, "Dad, guess what? I have good news." I said, "What's that?" She says, "I just got my period." And I said, "Okay." I'm like, "All right. Did you tell mommy yet?" She goes, "No, I wanted to call you first." I'm like, "Okay, honey, I think you better tell mommy." uh, and at that point, I didn't have feminine hygiene supplies at my house. And I'll never forget that weekend I had the kids. So the first thing I needed to do, because we usually, when I went to pick the kids up, we'd stop at the store, grocery store, and just get food for the weekend, any goodies or anything they wanted. And I remember going in the feminine aisle and just going, "Oh shit." Like, I'm just looking up, and it's like a whole aisle of products. And I'm just like, and some lady looks at me and she says, "Is this for your daughter?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "Do you need some help?" I said, "Yeah." She says, and then she goes, "Do you mind if I talk to your daughter?" I said, "No." And she went over to my daughter, and, and then she went over and picked a couple things off the shelf and put it in the shopping cart. And I looked at her. I said, "Thank you." I said, you really got me off the hook with that one." And she goes, "I just saw that you were perplexed as what to get and what to do." And she says,
So many choices.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like cereal boxes. I just like, where do I start? Do I get the Captain Crunch or the alphabets? So, but the lady saw that I was perplexed, and it was a first time for me. So at that moment, everything changed, because that's when I started teaching my children privacy and modesty. I always say, I taught my daughter, I said, privacy is your gift to yourself. Modesty is your gift to me. So when, a young female daughter is changing into her bathing suit in front of you, it means nothing. You're her parent. But now that she is a young woman, I would say, "Honey, now go in there and close the door. When you're ready, Daddy will come in and get you." At that moment, the relationship changed, and I started treating her from a child to a woman at that point, when I would give her privacy, and then she would be modest with me and say, "Okay, I'm ready." And that, for instance, when you're done having a bath, don't come running out naked in front of everybody when you're a little girl. At a certain age, it's cute with little naked kids running around, right? But at that point, when the first one was becoming a little bit older, there was 3 hooks in the bathroom with 3 bathrobes on it. You are to put that bathrobe on after you get out of your bath, and you walk through the house and you walk to your bedroom with the bathrobe on. We don't walk around like that anymore. And that's your responsibility, and that's your gift to me. And when you're changing, you close the door. That's appropriate. We started talking about what's appropriate and what's not. So when the world is just a big free-for-all, we got transgender story time, and lines of privacy and modesty are blurred, as fathers, and especially as single dads who are not primary custody dads, we need to create those boundaries. It's no longer a free-for-all, and you have to protect yourself as a father when you have young children coming out of the bathtub or out of the shower. And I had to start thinking that way now, and I'm like, this is so screwed up. But I had to do it to protect myself and also to train my children as well. And that was a new role that I took and that I had to fight all the blurry lines that society was throwing at me and throwing at my family, that all of that nonsense had to be hung at the door, and I wouldn't allow it in my house. And everything from the 3 hooks with the 3 bathrobes on it in the bathroom to don't start eating until everyone's plate has food on it. And then if one started eating, I'd be looking and he'd be, what? What? Are you forgetting something? Oops, sorry, he put the fork down. And then we'd fold our hands and we would give thanks. And that was the thing. We always said grace before dinner. And it got to the point where there were times when I would start eating on purpose. My kids would go, Dad, we didn't pray first. I said, okay, you're right. Just to kind of check their morality that we established in our family. So there's a constant fight. You have to be vigilant. Kids don't raise themselves. They don't become good citizens by themselves. So it has to be there has to be an intentional effort there to combat the bullshit that the world is throwing at them, because they just got done with transgender story time, and it seems like I'm saying that a lot, but that's just representative of a lot of things that are considered normal now that was not normal when I was a kid. And I like to say, when people say to me, well, what do you believe in? Whenever anyone asks you what you believe in, they're trying to trap you. And I basically come back with, I have the values of your grandfather. And nobody ever hated their grandfather. So that's my answer. I have the values of your grandfather when some smartass tries to corner me into some political argument or how I'm raising my children. That's what I do. And that's what worked for me.
It's like we know what right looks like, and you know what right looks like. And when you stop trying to do what's right and you start trying to do what's popular, that's when shit hits the fan. You're trying to fit in with what's the majority doing. You got to step back from that. It's not about being accepted and being the guy that you think people will like. It's about being what you know is right. Steve, did you want to jump on that one?
Well, yeah, no, George hit that shit out of the park, man. I can't say nothing but y'all mean.
Maybe that was a grand slam.
Yeah, he smacked that shit out of the park, man. You go to the next question, man. He smashed that one.
All right. We can do 2 more questions. So I saw a good one. What is the balance in the family and having the woman taking care of the home? A lot of guys hit this one up. They say, hey, should my wife be working for having kids? Should we go in daycare? What if we need money? It comes down to your situation and your family. But to me, if your woman is having a child, she should be there with that child for at least a few years. My wife, I was in the military when we had our first kid, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't start working until my second kid was 3 years old. Or, she worked at daycare and they went with her. So she was with them the entire time. So I think and that's just my opinion. If you can't eat unless your woman's working and you've got a family member that has to come over to take care of the kid, so be it. But you need to evaluate when you're having your kids. You got to have that chat. You got to have that discussion. You got to have that plan. Nobody can tell you what your economic situation is. Your wife. That's a conversation you two should have had already. When we have kids, you're going to stay home and take care of that child. Adam Lane Smith, who goes by @Prometheus on Twitter, he has a great segment on this to where think about being that baby. You smell your mom and all of a sudden you're ripped away from her and you get a new smell and you're trying to figure out who the hell is this smell? All right, now that person's gone and you're sent to a new smell. Who the fuck's this person? All right, they're feeding me. That's cool. Oh, wait, I moved again. Now I'm back to mom. Who the fuck? What role does mom really play? The kid's being passed around all day to different people, so it doesn't attach to anybody. And that's how it grows up. Shared around. It takes values from everybody. Split off. It's kind of like it's a burden. So are parents bad because their kids have to go to daycare? I don't think so. You're probably trying to do your best. But do I think that if you could set it up to where that wife didn't have to work and you could take a cut back on the extra vacations or all the other shit, I 100% say the mom and your wife should stay home with the child for as long as you possibly can. And that's the approach Jackie and I took. So I'm not shooting that on my ass. That's what I did.
Yeah, I fully concur. I know Mary Frances and I did the same thing. She's still with a 3-year-old, and that's going to continue on. The element of stability, comfort, particularly for children at that age, is immense. And the sheer notion that you're going to be able to outsource appropriate parenting skills that has the same level of connection, develop rapport, all this sort of connectivity, those bonds for development, and you're going to be able to outsource that to a third party is almost insane. But I get the fact that some families just are going to have to do that, but you're going to have to make up for it. And that just means that you're going to have to spend more time with your child and to spend time and be there with them than you would probably normally. And not just have that 20 minutes a day when you don't have a partner that's constantly there for them. Now, I think the roles also reverse too, that early on, it's definitely going to be the mother's nurture, father's cultivate. So as children get older, like George is talking about, where you cultivate ideas and cultivate senses of value and character with children, that's going to be a predominantly father role. And I see that transitioning as children get older into adults and making that segue into appropriately developing adults.
So somewhat on topic, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this, Sock, is I don't believe that fathers love their children the same way mothers love their children at birth. I think the mother had a 9-month head start. She grew up with the child, and fathers they love their kid. Absolutely. The kid's born, you love your child. But as that child grows, the way men have relationships is those nights you wake up and you take care of the child. When you're needed to be there for the child, you pick them up when they scrape themselves. That's how you fall in love with your kid. So I think there are a lot of dads who are like, I don't feel the same way about this kid my wife does. We both love him, but she's like, it's her world and it's not mine. And, do you agree it's because of kind of the head start a woman has? Or is it the way men and women love?
There's absolutely no doubt there's going to be a biological connection, that they're going to have it. There's an absolutely symbiotic relationship, where you have something gestating literally inside you, the nutrients, the hormones, everything else. Interesting enough, there's some indication that the child generating some of this stuff actually goes back into the bloodstream and it's shared with the mother, which I find really fascinating. Now, my personal example, I had my first child when I was damn near 50. And so that's really late in life. So I have a connection with my daughter from the standpoint that this was a road that I almost eschewed because of fears, insecurity with the society, my own lack of development or confidence in my ability. And you just had some honest fears that every time I look at her, I realize just how close my life came to being a absolute tragedy on human dimensions, of not having that, having been cultured not to do that. And I just, thank God and the stars and everything else that little being's in my life. And so I would get up in the middle of the night just to go over and look at her, and particularly in the starlight, with the moon or whatever's going on coming through the window. And you would just sit there and be absolutely humbled by it. And I know it kind of breaks my partner's heart to kind of see that and watch that. And she'd kind of stroke me and take me in, or I would just sort of pick my daughter up and walk with her through the house and just have her asleep in my arms. Because, during the day she was just a little too active or, being a toddler. But yeah, I will go through that. But it sounds so terribly stupid, but I am just absolutely stupid over my little girl. I mean, the depths of the emotion, when she's upset and she's crying and it's one of those fears and it's an honest to God issue. I've never been one to go into a freaking rage. I mean, I've gotten really upset, but I could commit murder. I mean, there is no doubt that a primal element is just striking such a deep, deep-seated chord with me in regards to her. And I think that's the way life should be, that you should have that sort of level of connection with your children. And you need to foster that, to develop it, to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, what that means, and know that every minute that I'm spending with her is an investment in what's going to live beyond me. There's so many guys I went to work with that were so fixated on their 401ks and developing that, watching the stocks or whatever the hell was going on in the retirement planning or whatever they were trying to achieve, but they absolutely ignored their children. And that to me, again, is just an astounding tragedy. And so I just, thank God that I have the ability to do what I do and spend time with my children.
Dude, yesterday, the dog, they're playing, they're puppies, bit my son, He said, "Ow." I said, "Suck it up." The dog bit my daughter, and she like almost cried. Dude, for a second, man, like for a second, I went there. I was like, I'm gonna snap its fucking neck. Like it bit my little girl. Dude, I was ready to destroy this thing. I told my son, I was like, "Hey, bring him outside." I was like, "I can't right now."
Yeah.
I mean, that's the perfect example.
Yeah.
All right. I said we do two more. All right. One of the last questions that came in. This will be the last one of this episode. When are you going to introduce your kids to the red pill? So let's put that also a little more vague or a little more broad. When did you introduce your children to the reality of the world? You know, when did you bring up, this is how it is, guys? It's not Disney. This is the world we live in. Steve, you want to go?
Yeah. I always say, like, I always tell people, you're always going to be your mother's baby. You know, you could be 80 years old and she'll still see you as her baby. But what I always preach and I do with my kids is, for especially my sons, I always tell them, listen, love your mom. Your mom is your mom. Love your mom. Respect your mom. But it's my job when they were like 6 or 7 years old to cut what I call cut the umbilical cord, where they didn't relate to mommy. Listen, I want you to love your mom, but your mom's way of doing things is more of what a woman would think. I mean, even though she's my woman, she still thinks like a woman, you know what I mean? And her thinking, she always wants to get the neosporin out and she wants to coddle, and that's her thing. That's just how women are. But it was my job to cut that umbilical cord and have him start to relate more to me and more to what I do. So what I did the first, I was always there, but I kind of stepped back and gave her those first 7 years where she can do all her coddling and all that cupcake ass shit she wanted to do with the boys. Not all right, fine. But when they got a certain age, we cut all that shit out. It was no more whining or crying or whimpering or complaint. And I don't do any of that shit here. I'm all about accountability and responsibility. That's what I push to my sons. I push to those boys. I kind of like showed them, like, we got to show you self-awareness. Got to show you how to communicate like a man. Got to show you how to think, how men act, how we behave. And that goes into, the little things like tie ties and, fix tires and learn how to cook a meal and all the other stuff that most guys can't do today. So I was always incorporating man to my sons and teaching them that, listen, love your mom, but you are not to relate to mom. And I think that's some of the issues that we have today, because a lot of these young boys don't have that. So they get coddled, and, mom is there to protect them, doesn't teach them where boundaries are. And then the worst part about what mom does is make sure that they don't tell them the truth about the real world. So these boys go out into the world eats their ass up. But with my sons, I let them see how the world is. The world is not a nice place. It just is what it is. But you can, as a man, you can navigate through that world as a man. And please understand this. I tell my sons all the time, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get beat up. You're even going to lose. But that's okay, because that's what's going to make you a stronger motherfucking man. Or I say Williams to them, but that's what makes them strong. So I say around 7 for me, I cut that cord and I make sure that they love mom, respect mom, but they don't relate to mom.
George, what point did you have those conversations to where you had to break that the Disney picket fence image they had of the world?
I think my kids had to learn the same way that I did. No one could tell me anything growing up. So there's talk amongst me and my brother Tony right now about my oldest son, and he's in a relationship. He goes to one college and his girlfriend goes to another college, and we're both going, uh-oh. and I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. I don't, my lens shows me the world the way it is, not the way that I want it to be. And I said to my brother Tony, I said, what do you think we can do for him? And he said, there's nothing. Just have the book ready to give to him if shit hits the fan. Because I'm seeing things on his Instagram that say I don't know what I would do without you. You're the love of my life. And I'm like, oh gosh, man, that apple fell so far from the tree. But I fell pretty darn far from the tree as well. And most men come to the red pill lens through trauma, chaos, disorder, only when they have to. It's better to go shopping when you're not hungry. Okay, otherwise you just end up putting all kinds
That's
of
really
junk
good.
in the cart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, he nothing I say appeals to him. So I say, now as a Christian guy, I say, Lord, he's in your hands. That sounds like a real cop-out for some people say, oh, that's a cop-out. Maybe it is. But, in my tradition, there's a reason why we call God our Father. So I couldn't be the full-time father, so I'm like, Lord, protect him. Every time he goes somewhere, Lord, protect him. Be with him. Give him wisdom. Because I know I needed it. I know my mother, when I was out at 2 o'clock in the morning as a young man, my mother was like, Lord, protect him. Surround him with your angels. I came from that kind of family. And so in that sense, I think I got that as well. I don't think he would listen to me. I texted him this week and I said, just want you to know and I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to, maybe he read between the lines. And I said something like, if life doesn't turn out the way you want it, just know that you can always talk to your dad. I'll be here for you. Really vague. I kind of danced around the topic because, when you try to shove a topic down a child's throat, they resist, just like I resisted with my dad. What makes me think I'm any different, So I think the best thing we can do for our children is to be there for them. I can't prevent them from being hurt in the future. I remember when I got divorced, I said to my mom, I was divorced at 44 years old. I said to my mom, Mom, what do you want for me? And she says, I just want you to be happy and I want you to be safe. There was no details, nothing. So anything where I was happy, anything that I was safe was okay with Mom. And I think I've adopted that. I'm done trying to micromanage my children as the non-custodial parent. I'm done with that. I wasted I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to be in their life more than I already was. And it was futile with the way the system is now, the court system and so forth. And so the best thing I can do is wish them and pray for their safety and that they're happy. And that if shit ever hits the fan in their life, Dad will be there. And I'm not going to be, I told you so. I will just be there in a non-judgmental fashion. And parenting changes at that point when you can no longer, like if a little kid is doing something, you can physically pick the kid up and say, no, do this. When they're older, you can't pick them up and say, no, you can only share your wisdom with them. And it's the same thing like with the red pill lens. People aren't going to hear anything unless they're ready. Kids are the same way. You can do your best. And I was very much into conscious parenting, but still they're going to go their own way. They're going to figure things out for themselves. And the best thing we can do is be there for them, not if they fall, but when they fall, because it's going to happen.
Socrates.
Yeah,
you're kind of on the other end. So George kind of saw at the end of it coming into it, and you've got a 3-year-old. So
I've got a 3-year-old
on the other side of that pendulum. How's it working?
Well, I've got a 3-year-old and I have 2 older boys. I've got a 16-year-old and a 22-year-old at the house. So, and both of the boys weren't exposed to a masculine figure, in any stretch of the imagination. So I do it by imprinting, to make sure that they see it. So they see me engaging their mother, flirting, playing, interacting, that there's a physical, social respect and a dynamic between a man and a woman, between two partners. So they actually get to see that interplay. But they also get to see kind of, the important one is how do you flirt, and kind of that sort of role, or, kind of me kind of grab her and caveman her and giving her a kiss, that there's that physical affection without shame, without remorse, without kind of hiding it, and how to be a confident male. Likewise, I will teach them how to engage my daughter, and they'll try to have boundaries with my daughter, or try to have my daughter not do something, and she'll pitch a fit and cry, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, to the point to where I have to intercede and say, enough of this shit. I'm trying to get something down or do something else, and this is wrecking the household tranquility. And so I tell them, if you want her to do something, engage her in a different way. Don't just stop her or resist, because she'll resist that. Change your mood by changing her mind. And that's one of those kind of approaches on how to engage or flirt with a woman, is that if she's saying no or kind of resisting, change your approach and start by changing her mood. So all of a sudden I'll go and just tickle my daughter, tickle fingers or whatever the hell it is, are you 100 tickle fingers bad? And she'll start giggling and changing that, or engaging in something off her. There's going to be a really kind of crazy thing that took place. As a kind of a younger kid, I went to an animal safari park where they actually had these massive domesticated lions and tigers. And one of the things that they could do was that you could feed them chicken drumsticks, and they're pretty freaking huge. And they would literally have you put your thumb in this lion's mouth, and the lion would kind of bite down on your finger, which was kind of odd. And he would just kind of gnaw it. But if you tried to pull, the line would lock down on your finger, and you could not pull it out with this fear of this line's going to chomp down, because your hand was now his. And you are taught that you had to offer the lion something of equal or better value in exchange to let go of the finger. And so I'm trying to teach the boys those sort of things, is that you have to compete for their attention. And so there's kind of that interplay. But, one of the things I'll just kind of do, and I don't know if you guys can generally see this, but a lot of times, you have to pretend if you're, particularly with women, what would her cat do? Because women are always intrigued by the cats. They don't want this loyal puppy dog. Women are not attracted to dogs the same way men are. If women would learn to take on dog traits, to be loyal and faithful and loving, would probably just be ecstatic. But women kind of tend to like a cat. So if you're ever lost as to what to do with a woman, what would her cat do? All of a sudden get diverted attention, come back around, not pay a whole lot of attention to her. Or, essentially one of my favorites is just slowly move a glass over to the side of the table and just keep pushing it over. At some point, there'll be this interplay, and she'll stop you or say stop. And now, but she also has to have the full realization that you're the type of guy that's going to potentially knock that damn thing off, but then not be shocked by it and say, oh, I screwed up, but just sit there and go, no, that's why we can't have anything nice, and kind of deal with that. So I don't even have to go through the whole gymnastics of that whole routine. I just, at a dinner table, we're having dinner, if I want to there's a lull or something over, I'll just sit down and just tap her glass just a little bit, and everybody starts busting up laughing because they immediately know the kind of the punchline to the joke. So it's kind of interesting to see the youngest one do that with a girl that he was seeing, where there was an engagement where I knew that kind of took place, that kind of came back as kind of a feedback. I'm like, yep, he's learning, he's imprinting, kind of, went to the Socrates boot camp of how to approach and engage women. But again, these are all sort of that red pill kind of notion that you just don't wait to teach them or to hand them Rollo's book or anything else. You have to show through a lifetime of experiences that they then, again, establishing the lines of communication so that when you're trying to sit down and say, hey, look, let's talk about the following thing, they're going to be receptive. They're not going to try to force a horse to drink water when it's not looking for or hasn't asked for it.
I like it. One of the guys on there said, I'm not fucking around with lions. I'm with them. I
was much younger and a lot stupider. I mean, it was just it was a huge line.
All right, cool. So I think that's it. Solid episode, gents. I'm fucking loving these patriarchs. Somebody updated, it's probably Anthony, updated the title. This was actually episode 6. So we're starting to make some way with this.
Nice. Very good.
Forward, inching towards that convention. All right, guys, let's find out where can they find you? Let's start with you, Sock. For the guys looking to hear more,
You know, probably it's going to be coming up. I've got to release my YouTube account, get some channels out, so that will be coming. But Manning Up Smart's kind of a defunct website that I've kind of developed years back about relationships and how to kind of have relationships in this kind of culture. You can find me definitely there. Definitely find me on Twitter, Socrates, or just type in Socrates on Twitter. Definitely hit me there, and you can also find me on Facebook as well.
Awesome, George. I think everybody knows, but where can they find you?
Yeah.
For those who don't know.
My YouTube channel is my name, George Bruno. I'm at Twitter at George Bruno and also on Instagram. And my website to sign up for my newsletter is georgebruno.com.
Make sure you subscribe to his YouTube. Let's get this man to 1 million.
Thank you.
Steve, where can these guys hear more?
Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say to these guys, man, it is a pleasure and an honor just to be with great men, man. This shit is like a natural high. I love this shit. I do want to say to those guys out there who are listening to this that are fathers, just try one thing real quick before I give them my information. Just when you go order food at Taco Bell or McDonald's, just change the voice. Be British. Be British or Irish, or just do that and embarrass your kids. It'll be a fun thing. But anyway, guys, if y'all want to holler at me, get your crayons out. Y'all can mess with me at themanmindset.com. I do shows every Tuesday, all day, every day, and in between. So, but I just want to say, hey guys, I appreciate all y'all. This is, I mean, I love this smoke y'all felt kicking out. Even Bruno, you gotta give me that bite, Bruno.
100%. Jackie says the same. I always leave these things edged up. It's like a fucking shot of espresso to my mind. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
So if you haven't already, there are links in the chat to check out the 21 Convention Patriarchs edition. We're doing this shit live. For fathers, by fathers. It's going to be kick-ass. Make sure you get your tickets. I am Hunter Drew. This is episode 6. Episode 7 is in 2 weeks from now. So 2 Thursdays. We'll see you guys then.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.